Welcome back to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast. At Healthy Steps Nutrition, we believe something as fundamental as nutrition shouldn't be complicated, which is why we focus on a simple, habit-based approach when working with clients. I'm your host, Nicole Coyne, registered dietitian and founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. I'm also the author of The Healthy Kids Cookbook, 100% kid-approved recipes for the whole family. You can find it on Amazon. In this podcast, we will be teaching you how to take one step at a time to becoming the healthiest version of yourself. Today, we are talking all about continuous glucose monitoring with one of the founders of Levels Health. But before we dive into continuous glucose monitoring, it's important to understand why you should care about this. Most people have no idea how their body is responding to the food they eat. In fact, the data isn't widely available until it's too late and you're most of the time diagnosed with diabetes. Here are the stats. 34.5% of US adults have prediabetes based on their fasting A1C, a 3-month average of your blood sugar. 13% of US adults have diabetes. Diabetes is a condition where your pancreas can't keep up with the work that it needs to do based on the food that you're eating. Your pancreas secretes something called insulin, which is a hormone that helps you break down glucose. And if you're constantly eating sugar and carbohydrates and your pancreas isn't able to keep up, you're going to have high blood sugar. Imagine your pancreas is a car and you don't take care of that car. You don't change the oil. Eventually, you are going to have problems and something is going to break. That is diabetes. But the truth is, your car didn't break overnight. It happened from years of wear and tear, sometimes faster than others. Yes, there is type 1 diabetes where some people are born with the inability for their pancreas to work, and you're not going to get around not taking insulin. But type 2 diabetes, what most people have, all comes from lifestyle choices and the food that we eat. Continuous glucose monitoring allows you to see how your body responds to the foods and make adjustments to treat chronic disease. Super interesting. Today's podcast, I talked to Josh Clemente. He's one of the founders of Levels Health. We talk about how continuous glucose monitoring has evolved over the years, what we both have learned from our continuous glucose monitoring experiments, and how sleep, stress, and other factors all go into your blood sugar and how it is controlled. At the end of this episode, I will share the top 3 lessons I learned from my personal glucose monitoring experiment. We will get to this episode right after this message. Do you know someone that's looking to get healthy this year? We would love for you to share this podcast with them. You never know who could use some words of encouragement. Take a screenshot, post it on social media, and please don't forget to tag at Healthy Steps Nutrition so your friends can find some more awesome free help. Don't forget to subscribe to this episode either. All right, enjoy this podcast on continuous glucose monitoring with Josh Clemente from Levels Health. Josh Clemente, welcome to the Nutrition Made Simple podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here.
We are talking all about chronic disease today and something that is really cool, continuous glucose monitoring.
Yes. Continuous glucose monitoring is near and dear to me. It's been transformative in my own life. I kind of call myself patient zero for the Levels product because, I historically have been very interested in physical fitness. I've played sports my whole life. I've been a CrossFit trainer for 9 years now, although I don't train that often anymore. It's just more so I take physical fitness and performance very seriously. But I've only recently, through continuous glucose monitoring, understood the other sides of what it means to be healthy, and specifically the paradigms of nutrition, sleep, and stress management. And I'm just excited and privileged to be able to work on this project of bringing this crazy tech that was developed for the management of diabetes to, I think, the whole new world of wellness and nutrition management.
It is so fascinating to me because most people have no idea what's going on the inside of their body. They eat something and maybe they might realize that they have low energy, like the afternoon crash, but they probably don't even correlate it to what they eat, let alone what is actually going on the inside of your body. What's happening to your blood sugar? How is your body responding to food? And essentially, that's what continuous glucose monitoring does. It helps you understand how food that you eat is processed and how your body responds to it. And the cool thing is, every person's a little bit different.
Absolutely. The fascinating thing is just that we have data that we're using in so many different ways in society. And exactly to your point, the one big gaping hole is our health. Most people get one data set, maybe like when they get blood work done at the doctor's office per year. And they're using that. Not only is the doctor using it this way, but the individual is using it this way to project their health, to extrapolate one data point and say, this is how healthy I am. And there's no other similar situation in society. We have massive data sets on everything from real estate to finance to name it, right? Where we have more data about our social trends and social transactions and how many likes we have from who than we do about whether or not our daily lunch is causing us to be sick. And I think it's fundamentally imperative that we change that and we put people into an empowered position where every day you're making objective, data-driven decisions that are tailored to you. And the singular benefit is that we will be able to, I think, give the individual control. But the secondary benefit is that it will be tailored and unique. And like you just mentioned, there's so much individuality that we've only discovered with this technology. Continuous glucose monitors were developed to do exactly what they sound like. They measure glucose levels in the blood in real time for people who have blood sugar dysregulation. So typically for people with diabetes. But recent studies in the non-diabetic population have shown that, and the most interesting one, which I'll just jump right to the chase on, was done in 2015, which showed that two people could eat the same two foods, which were in this case a banana and a cookie made with wheat flour, and they can have equal and opposite blood sugar responses. And so to say that flips the table over on like an ideal diet is to understate it. It's like it's truly the case that we really need tailored information about the individual, both in terms of I think probably genetics and body composition, but also context. Like the reason that people have such wildly different responses to the same food is not just genetics, which was actually shown in the study. It's also something like, how stressed are you? How much body fat do you have on your body? How much muscle mass, lean muscle mass to metabolize the food you're eating. And so all of that combines into a context, and we can now use that real-time data to solve that problem. It doesn't have to be something big and scary.
So much information that you just said, and all of it is super interesting. But the truth is, there's 60% of our US population has one chronic disease. 40% has two or more. And it didn't happen overnight. It's daily actions, elevated blood sugars consistently, and a ton of other factors that play into, are you getting sicker or better every single day, right? I remember talking to Julie Fouché a couple of weeks ago on a podcast, and we were talking about when you're diagnosed with something is not when it happened, it's years of decisions. And if you can proactively understand how your body is handling certain foods, stress, and sleep, how they all impact your overall wellness, you're going to make informed decisions. So, I worked in the hospital as a dietitian for a long time. Continuous glucose monitors were new when I was working there and not widely available. Now they are more widely available to the general public. So you can actually educate yourself. You don't have to be diabetic. And I'm sure you can answer this question. I can answer from experience, but people think, Nicole, you have a needle in your arm. Does it hurt? Right? Like that's the first question people ask.
What's interesting is I just love what you touched on there, just briefly, the compounding effects of our decisions. Like every day we're sitting down and we're saying, what I'm going to eat lunch, what am I going to eat and why? And the answer is overwhelmingly based on emotion or based on an internet search or based on something that someone told you at some point that worked for them. And that's a major problem because, as you just said, these decisions, we make hundreds of them every day. These are our lifestyle choices and they compound together into an outcome. And it's not overnight. It is truly that we are on a spectrum of health, and we're constantly making trades. We're balancing our health in one direction or another. And without feedback, it's very easy to over time make very small, poor decisions that ultimately lead to a very large health consequence. So really being able to just course correct or see trajectory in real time is just a massive improvement. It's literally shining a light where we previously had none. We're flying blind. So, the tech, the history of continuous glucose monitors is really interesting. I mean, it was developed in the lab initially and done in like N of 1 experiments to just see if this could work. And then eventually was moved into the very expensive, very advanced therapeutic space where, someone was paying thousands of dollars a month to be able to, in most cases, manage type 1 diabetes, where you have to very accurately, meter insulin in based on glucose levels. Because it's been a very tightly controlled development process in a specific population, that has kind of led to a very long development process. So it's been decades really that this tech has been in some various stage of development. But we've seen an explosion in innovation in CGM over the past like 5 years, where the costs have come down by almost 2 orders of magnitude. In 10 years, have come down by 2 orders of magnitude. In just 5 years, it's been an order of magnitude. And the availability has gone through the roof. And small improvements in like the microelectronics in our cell phones have contributed to the medical device technology we can use. So Bluetooth, for example, making its way into the continuous glucose monitor and allowing continuous streaming to the phone without scanning or without finger pricks. All of this has been amazing. And, I think not the least of which is just the patch that you wear has become so small and slim and convenient that, you can, I was training for a triathlon with one of these early in 2020 pre-COVID, and swimming every single day, long exercises, long workouts, like lots of sweat. And the device is just like, it's there, but I don't know it's there. And the reason is that that needle that you were touching on is actually a very flexible filament. It's almost like a hair-like implement. And so that flexibility makes it such that it can move with the fascia and the tissue, and it doesn't feel rigid. You can't feel that, as a sensation in your arm. And it's really for that reason giving you extremely high quality data, because it is actually interacting with molecules in your interstitial fluid, without, I think, sacrificing comfort. So it's those advances that have all happened, fairly recently, that I think are making this really plausible to move from the sort of medical therapeutic use case over to general wellness in the general population.
You literally cannot feel it. You feel more. What hurt me is taking off the Band-Aid because it was pulling out the hair on my arm. The actual needle did not hurt at all. You literally cannot feel it. But the cool thing is you can see basically every minute what your body is doing, like right before you eat something, right after, 1 hour after, 2 hours after. And when you eat something, your blood sugar should go back to normal, but a lot of times it doesn't. And depending on what you eat, it could take much longer. So what you guys have done is put a number system next to how your blood sugar responds. So the first thing I did when I got the level system, because I used it for 6 weeks, my husband did, and I have an interesting story about him. But I was like, I'm going to have an acai bowl, because everyone thinks acai bowls are the best thing since sliced bread, right? Like everyone's like, this is healthy. It got a 1. My acai bowl got a 1 out of 10. And I don't know if there's a 0 in the score, but I'm guessing like 1 is really low. And
there is a 0, but it's hard to get.
And the reason was because it took, my blood sugar skyrocketed, and it took so long for it to go down. And acai itself is actually really good for you. But when you go buy an acai bowl in the store, it's loaded with sugar, and then they add honey, and then they add more sugar with fruit and all this stuff in there. And it's just a lot of carbohydrates that you're eating and you don't even realize. And that's when you look at the core problem of why we have chronic disease issues in the US and why we have such big obesity issues in the US, it's coming down to we're not educated on what we eat, and we're tricked every single day by food marketing companies.
100%. I'd like to think of it as we have developed too much power in terms of the amount of energy that we can get into a single meal. And we are powerless. We don't have a feedback mechanism built into our system, into our bodies, to know that. So, historically, like it's easy to just look at what's available in the store, or look what's available for, food takeout options, and assume that that was designed like by some smart regulating body to be best for us. It's like, this is the food that's available in the store, so that must be what's good for us. It's very easy for people to just go on autopilot and assume that, but it's exactly the opposite. The path that the food supply has taken is the path of least resistance, which is whatever humans are predisposed to crave, we will provide that. And humans historically have been in conditions of famine. Like, food has been scarce. Like, for the vast majority of evolution, we did not have any agriculture. So it was like we had to hunt and gather and, eat whatever was available. And we were fasting for long durations of time, and calories were scarce. And so we have always craved calories, anything we can get. And the higher the calorie density, the better. And so that's, typically sugar and sources of really rich fats. So those are the things that we love. They taste great. They're rewarding to eat. And now we're in a situation where we can produce as much of that as we want for every person on the planet. And that is exactly what we're doing. And unfortunately, we've now exceeded the ability of the human physiology to metabolize that. We can literally train wreck ourselves in a single meal and eat more fast acting carbohydrates than a prehistoric person would come across in literally years, if ever. And what's really interesting is, like I said, it's because of that scarcity situation where we evolved without surplus being available. We don't have a sensory feedback mechanism. It doesn't hurt to eat sugar. In fact, it's extremely desirable and enjoyable. Like, it's like a positive reinforcement mechanism, which is really bad when you have so much of it available. So all that to say, I think that when you can replace that, sensory feedback, that pain that you have when you touch a hot stove, with data, like if you can just see feedback from your body that says, look, you're not feeling pain right now, but what's happening is not good. Like, this is a disaster for you. It can supplement that. You can recognize, oh, wow, like that acai bowl, despite the fact that it says, healthy and fruits and vegetables, or what have you, or all natural sugars, it's still overloading my system in a significant way. And maybe I should just eat some acai, straight, and try that instead. And then when you see how much better that is for you, you might, and using the levels features, we've developed metrics to help score those things, as you touched on. And you can see, like, the acai bowl may be a 1, maybe a handful or a bowl of fresh acai, maybe like a 7 or an 8 or a 9 even. And, you're getting all those antioxidants and nutrition benefits without kind of detonating your, your glucose insulin pathways.
It's so interesting. And I think you're right. When you can see what's happening on the inside of your body, you're so much more prone to make positive choices. My husband I would say, he really loved his sugar at night. He liked his brownies. He liked his, cookies. And it literally took him wearing the monitor, seeing that his blood sugar was elevated all night from the brownies that he was eating. And then he started correlating that with the quality of sleep that he was having. And he hasn't done it since. And it's been like a couple months now. So
Wow.
it's super interesting to see. And like, we're not perfect. We all have our cravings. And you're right. Our brains are literally light up when we have sugar and fat together. Like, it's not our fault that we crave more and more, because our psychologically, like, we do crave more. Our brains like that. So it is really interesting when people are educated and understand what's going on the inside of their body, how their decision making changes.
Absolutely. It's the theory of the levels organization is that fundamentally our thesis is that people don't want to be unhealthy. And actually that's like not a very popular position. It's very common in industry circles to think that no, people don't want to change. They're not going to change. Like, it's an uphill battle. Everyone kind of wants to be unhealthy. And I just certainly disagree at a personal level. And the organization is built on the idea that with better information, people will act. It is certainly not the case. And we've seen this with smoking. As better information has come around, with respect to how smoking can lead directly to lung cancer, we've seen precipitous drop off in voluntary cigarette smoking. And so I think the same thing will happen with nutrition, where, your husband, for example, sees, oh, this is like destroying not only my blood sugar control, which has inflammatory effects, but also my sleep, which, if I'm not recovering, that puts us into an elevated state of stress. We feel terrible the next day. We're more likely to indulge and repeat the vicious process. He sees that and takes action and decides, like, actually, the reward is not worth the penalty. And again, I'll point to my own experience. Growing up, like I said, I played a bunch of sports. I was always active, never had a problem with weight gain. And so I really believed that for the longest time that a calorie was a calorie. And whether it came from broccoli or from pure cane sugar, as long as it's energy and I can use it, and burn it on the playing field or in the gym, it doesn't matter. I can eat anything. And we now know with the hormonal implications of, certainly sugars, but other foods, that that's not true. And also, to go back to my example, like I was living that as a total candy addict. Like I would eat candy for dinner in college. And I kind of carried this through into my professional life where I was always a dessert guy, just really loved to reward myself with whatever dessert was available every night. And since using the continuous glucose monitor and connecting what ultimately was like some significant physical, mental, and mood burnout that I was experiencing when I first started experimenting with CGM with those decisions and seeing how closely my mood tracked with my blood sugar control or lack thereof, I haven't touched candy since. I mean, I've had dark chocolate, but it's been about 3 years since I've had a piece of candy. And it wasn't a discipline based decision. It wasn't something like I suddenly developed massive motivation to just, take on this huge challenge and quit cold turkey. It was like, no, I was actively arming myself and I didn't know it until I saw the data. And now I'm just unwilling to do that to myself. So it is pretty amazing.
Everyone wants to feel well, right? Like you don't want to be in a bad mood. You don't want to have these energy ups and downs. You want to sleep well. And so many times we don't connect the dots to go back to what we ate. And if we started thinking, okay, I'm having a large sub and chips for lunch, and then I feel like crap in the afternoon. Why is that? Oh, I just need coffee in the afternoon. And that's the reason. Well, what if we changed and had a little bit more balanced meals for lunch and just watched how do we feel in the afternoon? Are you starting to feel better? And I think when you're starting to get in tune with how you feel and connecting it to what you eat, you're much more likely to stick with something because you're like, oh, I actually feel better. I want to feel well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going back to what you were saying. Like, I truly believe the same thing. Like people want to feel the best that they possibly can, right?
I totally agree. Yeah. And it's, right now it's a very trial and error process, but we're going from a situation where we were flying blind completely. And it was really a matter of doing exactly what you're saying, where let's say you feel bad at 2 p.m. You're just like, oh man, I just want to lay down and go to sleep. And then you start thinking like, well, did I sleep poorly last night? Maybe I did. I kind of stayed up late. I ate that popcorn. I wonder, well, maybe it's just bad sleep. And then, you completely ignore the fact that you went for a sushi lunch and you had a bunch of, sushi rolls with white rice. And that doesn't even cross most people's mind that it could be, 2 hours later, you're experiencing a reactive hypoglycemic event where your body had a huge blood sugar spike from the white rice, had to flood your system with insulin to get that out, overcompensated, your blood sugar's crashing, and now you're feeling lethargic and low energy, and your mood has dropped out. And to make matters worse, you're hungry and you want to go get some snacks. And so that is the vicious cycle that many people live. And because they were previously like trying to navigate that based on emotion or on just blind guesses, it didn't work super well, or it doesn't work super well for most people. And that's why, I'm super optimistic about, real-time biometrics being able to just in like a very lightweight way, not in a disciplinarian sense, but just surfacing that insight and saying, yeah, that was actually lunch. Like you're experiencing the fallout from lunch, as surprising as that may be. And then you can just test something different and watch and notice the qualitative experience change. So for me, when I took those massive spikes and crashes out of my diet, I started to feel so much more consistent. It wasn't that I had superhuman energy, but I didn't have those lows, which were what I was trying to solve for.
And you sleep better. I noticed tracking my blood sugar for those 6 weeks that when I ate a little bit more carbohydrates at night, I did not sleep well and I woke up with elevated blood sugar. And I would have never connected those dots as quick as I did when you have those metrics, those biometrics to look at the data.
Yeah, it's the sleep connection is, I think, bidirectional, meaning like I think that the quality of your sleep and the consistency of your sleep affects how your metabolic system functions. So there have been some studies to show, just a single night of short sleep can cause a 40% reduced glucose clearance from the blood after an oral glucose tolerance test. But then also, like you said, the what you eat correspondingly affects how you sleep. And so there's this crazy feedback loop you can get into where whether it starts with bad food or bad sleep doesn't really matter, because ultimately they lead to worse and worse outcomes for both. And I'm really, really like looking forward to the combination. We're bringing sleep data into the Levels app right now for the first time and starting to make that actionable. But I just cannot wait to be able to connect those dots for people in a way and show them, the causal factors that are affecting their sleep. Because I mean, it really sucks to be trying to chase down bad sleep. It's one of the worst. I can't think of a worse thing than just constantly, oh wow, that could have been that dessert I ate. It's like a breakthrough.
I'm excited about what you guys are doing with Levels because it's going to give the general population so much more access to understand their bodies in real time. It's a really cool thing that you guys are doing. I'm excited, and we're going to be starting to integrate what you guys do with our nutrition coaching because it provides dietitians a whole nother level of support you can give to clients. Okay, your body is reacting this way to the food you eat. Let's make these specific adjustments and see how you feel and how your blood sugar responds to it.
Yeah, and I can't wait for that to kick off. I think right now the Levels program we're building is certainly tailored towards metabolic awareness. It's just connecting the with a very short feedback loop, the actions we're taking and the reactions our bodies experience. And we have a lot of ground to cover there, but the future is where experts like yourself can bring this data in, import it into the conversation with a client, and have the conversation begin from a position of objective personalized data. So I can only imagine, not being a dietitian myself, but I can only imagine that would be significantly beneficial to start off with months of both lifestyle information about, how this person's sleeping, how this person's eating, and then correspondingly how their bodies are responding to it, and be able to, begin there rather than from scratch.
Absolutely. And it's not saying you have to do it forever, but I do think you should do it for a season to see how your body is responding to food, get into a good routine, and then, maybe you go back to it or not. I think it's really, really cool. Anything that you're really surprised about wearing the continuous glucose monitoring system yourself for a while? What were you most surprised about in regards to, we have a lot of CrossFit athletes that listen to this podcast, in regards to exercise and blood sugar?
So I never, I had read about the physiologic effects of intense exercise and kind of knew about what I should have expected to see. But when I first did, I think it was a CrossFit Open workout, like shortly after I got, I was just doing it on my own. Obviously, I wasn't in the Open, but I was doing this workout with my CGM on for the first time, and my blood sugar went. It was so average. You should, the Levels goal is to stay below 110 milligrams per deciliter, like including meals. My blood sugar went to over 210, which would be kind of a diabetic blood sugar range from a fasted CrossFit workout. And it was hyper intense. I was pushing super hard. And what's happening there is something that I think is profoundly interesting. It was totally fascinating to me to see what was going on. And basically the stress of the workout is introducing cortisol and adrenaline, which are telling my body, we're in a fight or flight mode here. We need fuel available for the muscles. And so the liver just starts cranking out sugar and releasing it into the bloodstream. And your liver can produce new glucose from protein and fat on your body. So that's one of the fascinating mechanisms that you see in real time in a hard workout, where like you actually don't need necessarily to carb load before a hard workout. Your body is going to do everything it needs to not only produce the glucose you're going to use, but like a significant overload. And that it's pretty wild to see that happen in real time, and then to understand the mechanisms and carry that out. Like I think it touches on a lot of the different stress pieces that we come across in life. But just comparing that like super intense 110% output, where you see a massive glucose elevation with say 2 hours of low intensity zone 2 training on a bike, where for me, my blood sugar just kind of like monotonically decreases. It just continuously like drops, and then it will flatten out, where like basically at the point where my liver is producing enough to keep me level. And those two different regimes of exercise, I think being able to see the data has completely changed how I fuel for exercise. Like I now know that for a hyper intense workout, when first of all, I don't want a lot of food in my stomach anyway, because I just generally would feel nauseous trying to keep food down when I'm pushing that hard. but I also don't need it. Unless I'm going to be going that intense for 90 minutes or 2 hours, I'm not going to deplete my glycogen, and there's no need for me to, carb up. But for the longer duration rides, like I will potentially need to time some fueling in order to keep myself from bonking, because I've also seen that happen where my glucose will just crater, and I'll hit like 50 or 55 or something mid ride and completely lose energy. So, we're in the very early stages of using this for performance, but those lessons learned of just seeing how your body responds is pretty brilliant to me.
I can tell you this. Can say the same exact thing that you said. Saw the same thing with my CrossFit workouts. My blood sugar would go up in the 200, like low 200 range, consistently doing CrossFit workouts.
Mm,
And it wasn't because I had a bunch of food before. I usually just have an applesauce on my way in the morning before I go to the gym. And that's usually all I have. So it's not like a 15-gram applesauce is bringing your blood sugar up to 200. It is from the exercise. And it was super interesting. And what was even more interesting, after your blood sugar goes down, but then you eat something and it doesn't go as high as you think it would after, which is also super interesting.
exactly. Yeah. And I want to clarify, like, it may sound bad that your blood sugar goes that high during a workout because we're talking about how glucose spikes are bad and all that stuff, but it's entirely different physiologically from eating a sugary meal that would do that to you. This is your
Yes.
body taking stores of, fat and protein available and breaking them down, recombining into glucose and releasing for your muscles to use. And so many studies have been done to show that high intensity interval training in particular is directly related to better insulin sensitivity, meaning like the body improves its ability to clear glucose from the bloodstream. So it's that mechanism, although it's interesting to watch and kind of counterintuitive, is definitely connected with better outcomes long term. And like you said, when you're in that glycogen depleted phase, so you finish that hardcore workout, all of that glycogen's been used, your body's been like producing new glucose. You're now in a mode where your muscles are like primed to suck in glucose to replenish that glycogen, and so you can kind of indulge a little bit more right after those hard workouts with some carbs and not experience a big blood sugar spike, which really goes to the concepts that we've all heard about, but helps to reinforce them. And like, for on days when I put in a really hard workout and deplete those glycogen reserves, I'm not going to feel super bad about, replenishing, knowing that and I'm not going to overdo it. Like I used to really overdo it, eating Pop-Tarts and stuff, but like, and I've seen I can definitely overdo it after a hard workout, but now it's more tailored to what I know I can tolerate.
It goes back to what we've been talking about this whole time. When you have the data, you can make more educated decisions on how to properly fuel your body for overall wellness and health, and also performance, which is really neat that you guys are going to be helping more pro athletes understand how their bodies are responding to. Any final thoughts with continuous glucose monitoring before we jump off?
Well, I mean, I think that we're just scratching the surface, just to kind of paint the picture of the future. Like we've demonstrated the potential for, well, we're just starting to demonstrate the potential really for this metric, glucose. And I'm really looking forward to, with wider adoption, seeing all the innovation that comes. Right now Levels is focused on the data science and the software, but the potential for the hardware is that we could have, with sufficient adoption, we could have the innovation drive us towards multiple analytes that are, glucose, free fatty acids in the blood, insulin, cortisol, all these hormones that are driving our experience, the sensations we feel, not to mention the molecules associated with fuel and metabolic health status. And so I think we're really at the beginning. It feels like an evolutionary step to start using, this tech in real time. But I mean, 5 years from now, I think it's going to be effortlessly integrated in a number of ways into both the decisions we make every day and also our understanding of where we're heading. It's like very, very much, I think, going to be similar to financial data, where we are using it in real time to plan ahead and make sure that, similar to retirement, like we want to make sure we're financially secure for retirement. We'll be able to ensure that we're going to be healthy enough to enjoy retirement, I think, using this data. So just looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for all that you guys are doing, because I truly think we're in a really cool place where people can have access so soon to information that is going to shape their future and set them up for success long term, and hopefully get these numbers down so we don't have 60% of the population with chronic disease and so many people not even knowing that they have blood sugar issues or they're putting themselves at risk every single day because of the decisions that they're making. So thank you for all that you guys are doing. You can find Josh at levelshealth.com. But where else can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Joshua's Forest with 2 R's, and then on Instagram at josh.f.clemente. And then I even more so recommend following along on the Levels accounts at Levels on Twitter and Instagram. And we like to boost, our members at how they're using the product and what they're learning. And also we post articles to the blog and, kind of help surface information about metabolism, metabolic fitness, and continuous glucose monitoring.
You guys do such a good job on your blog posting educational information for anyone to learn more about continuous glucose monitoring and how to positively impact their health and wellness. So thank you for all that you guys do. Thanks again for coming on the podcast. If this all sounded super interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to get levels, I want to test and go through a continuous glucose monitoring experiment myself, we will put the link in the show notes to get set up with Levels Health.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And for those who do want to participate, we are currently still in development. So we have an invitation-only beta, but Nicole has the link to have everyone kind of jump ahead of the waiting list and participate early if you'd like to. So thank you in advance to anyone who does, and looking forward to your feedback.
Awesome. And you just told me before we started recording, there's 85,000 people, and it's the beginning of February, that are on that wait list. So you guys have quite a bit of people that want access to this, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's right. It's very vindicating because I think it just shows that there is, as we touched on this show, people don't want to be unhealthy. They want better information. They want to make educated decisions for themselves and feel confidence. So I think that number helps to demonstrate how true that is.
I hope you enjoyed that episode on continuous glucose monitoring. It really is an interesting thing that you can do to empower yourself to make educated decisions. I can tell you from personal experience, I think twice about some things that I'm eating and how I pair foods together based on the things that I've learned from monitoring my glucose for over 6 weeks. As promised, here are my 3 biggest lessons that I learned. Number 1, pairing protein, carbs, and fats together really does help stabilize your blood sugar and prevent those quick spikes and quick crashes. It helps you normalize your energy levels. Number 2, you mentioned this during the podcast, but eating carbs and sugar at night really affected my blood sugar overnight. And it caused a second spike, and my blood sugar was higher fasting in the morning when I had sugar and carbohydrates at night. Some people can break down carbohydrates better than others, and I learned that I do not process carbohydrates the best, probably because I don't eat a ton of carbohydrates at one time. All right, the third thing has to do with alcohol. A glass of wine did not spike up my blood sugar. In fact, Jason and I went out to dinner a few times, and I had a glass of wine, mashed cauliflower, broccoli, and some salmon, and my blood sugar didn't go up at all. It was rated a 9 out of 10, that meal, based on how my blood sugar responded. Contrary, a mojito, on the other hand, spiked it up drastically. How much sugar are you drinking? Do you have sugar-sweetened beverages? Or if you're drinking alcohol, are you having sugar in the alcohol? I would be mindful of that because it definitely will affect your blood sugar. We talked a little bit about exercise and how it spiked up your blood sugar, but I was fascinated by this. My blood sugar went up the highest when I was exercising, and it was all a natural physiological response, not because of the food that I ate. If you are interested in jumping the 85,000 people waitlist of Levels Health, you can click the link in the show notes and you can skip the line and start your own continuous glucose monitoring experiment with our link in partnership with Levels Health. One last thing. If you are thinking, now is the time, I need someone to help me with my nutrition, we would love to help you. You can work with a dietitian at our Healthy Steps Nutrition HQ location or find a nutrition coach near you. Click the link in the show notes or go to hireanutritioncoach.com and find a Healthy Steps nutrition coach near you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. We'll see you back next week.